Inspirational Creatives, episode 155. Welcome to Inspirational Creatives. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. Join me every Friday as I chat with successful artists, producers, and creative entrepreneurs who share powerful stories and strategies. They can help you to create the life that you want. Listen each week as these inspirational creatives show you how to take your creativity to the next level. You'll learn how to create a sustainable business that inspires others and gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. Make sure you sign up at inspirationalcreatives.com to get free exclusive bonus material. And now, on with the show. My guest today is an award-winning author and also the host of The Prosperity Show. She's a coach and someone who's dedicated to helping those struggling financially to find financial freedom in their lives and business. She is someone who has a passion for helping people to improve their relationships with money. And as a coach, a mentor, and as a business owner with over 25 years experience, she's helped many creative entrepreneurs and practitioners earn more and get out of debt by understanding their emotional relationships with money. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today, Joan Sotkin. Joan, welcome.
Hi there. So good to be here.
Fabulous. So let's get straight into this then, Joan. What does financial freedom mean to you?
To me, it means not worrying about money and feeling that I have enough to support myself. For me, financial freedom does not mean having to have $10 million in the bank. It's really about a feeling that I have that I'm not trapped in anything that I'm doing. Right.
So the word that's sticking out to me there is this feeling. So when we're talking about financial freedom, are we talking about feelings?
Yes, I think so. Freedom is a feeling. It's not you can be in a very limited environment and still feel free. Freedom is a feeling. It's something you perceive. I know a lot of people who have a lot of money who don't feel free. They feel trapped by their money.
That's fascinating. So for those people that are trapped by their money and for those that feel that they need more money, money is such an emotional experience for many people. How does that work in your experience? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, people who don't have a lot of money or have trouble earning money think that if they have a lot of money, they never have to think about money, which is really what they want. They don't want to have to think about money. But the more you have, the more you have to think about it. Otherwise, it's going to disappear. So being trapped by money means that you have a lot and you have people around you who are helping you take care of it. But you always have to be concerned about it and take care of it. People think that you can have so much money that you never have to worry how much you spend. But you do. The reason people are wealthy is because they don't spend all their money. And, people who don't have money have this very strange idea about what it is to be wealthy. I've always had wealthy friends and have been surrounded by wealth. And because of what I saw in their families, it never made me want to have all that. And to me, the wealth comes from the fact that, yes, I have enough to live comfortably, but I also have this incredible amount of peace of mind. And I find that that's unusual. And even people with lots of money don't necessarily have peace of mind.
Okay, so it's in some respects we're talking about peace of mind then. So is this a mindset thing for somebody who's perhaps new to this idea?
Of financial freedom, do you mean? Well, you have to decide what financial freedom means for you and what you're willing to do to make it happen. Money doesn't fly in the window. So that if you're a creative and you're an artist or a healer or any of these things, and you're really good at what you do, that's not enough. You have to also understand the marketplace, because what you're doing is bringing your talent and bringing it into a marketplace where people pay for certain things. And the way it works is you have to put yourself out there in a way that follows the rules of advertising and makes your stuff appealing to people. And if you don't understand the marketplace, then you're going to have trouble making money. And once you make it, the problem is people think, oh, I sold a piece of art, I made $10,000, I can do that again. But you have to learn how to manage the money that you have. In the 1980s, I had a business that was very dear to my heart. It was a crystal business. I was the first one to market crystals and minerals for healing and meditation nationwide. And I started out with just a couple of crystals and started teaching people how to use them. This was before anybody was using crystals. And I built it into this huge business where in today's money, I was making over $50,000 a month. And I wound up going bankrupt because I didn't know how to manage cash flow. And that's when I realized that I couldn't just follow my heart. I really had to understand the world of money in order to make it and keep it.
Right. So it's about harmonizing your passions, your talents, your interests with cash flow in that sense.
Understanding money. Money is an energy force. And it doesn't just find its own way. You have to discipline it. Oh, I can get that. I can get that. Oh, I can get that. No, you have to discipline it. And people who are wealthy usually are very financially aware. Now, it's different if you inherit your wealth. That's a whole different story, because then you have to learn a whole new set of skills. But if you're going to make money at what you're doing, then you have to understand not only how to sell your things, but how to manage the money when it comes in, how to decide what to spend your money on and what to save. And if you don't know how to do that, you'll never get wealthy. And if being wealthy is what you perceive to be financial freedom, then you've got to learn how to be wealthy.
Fascinating. So can you describe to me what you mean by the sort of fundamentals that support being financially aware?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's important to understand what money is. Money by itself has absolutely no meaning, no energy. It's just pieces of paper or numbers on a spreadsheet. Money is actually the energy of relationship. It's the energy. It's without other people, without other entities. Money passes between two people or entities, and therefore can be considered a symbol of relationship. And how you deal with money is how you deal with your relationship with yourself and others. That's part of the foundation. And the thing about money, it goes to people who love and take care of it just like people. And I mean, there are lots. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is filled with creative people, lots of artists and healers, and it's one of the reasons I love being here, because I can do whatever I feel like doing. But they don't understand that they're also in business. And I have a website, NewMexicoNaturalHealing.com, that I built quite a while ago. And I built it. I wanted to help the healers get the word out. And it was amazing to me how many people who were healers, trying to make a living being healers, who had no idea that they were in business. And if you're in business, there are certain skills you have to have in order to build a business. You have to understand advertising, marketing, money management, all of those things. And the people who do the best, the artists and the healers who do the best, are the ones who understand that. You can't just do your craft and say, well, look how talented I am. Won't the world just support me in being that? No. We live in a capitalistic society that has certain rules. And if you want to live in this society, you have to kind of know what those rules are.
Right. So in essence, what are some of those rules in your experience?
Okay, first of all, you have to understand marketing. You have to know how to put out the sign and let people know who you are and what you do. You have to find the people who would possibly be attracted to what you do. It's like with music. If you play classical music, you're not going to try to tell what you do to people who like heavy metal. So you have to find the people who like classical music. You have to find your audience. And one of the amazing things that we have available to us today is the internet, where everything is. It's the theory of everything. The internet, there's a little bit of everything on the internet. And you just have to find the people with whom you feel connected. And you have to say, well, hi, this is who I am, and who are you? So it's about building relationships. If you're an artist, it's about building relationships with potential art buyers. You'll also have relationships with other artists. The core of business is relationships. And one of the symbols of those relationships is money. Okay, do you see the relationship?
Yeah.
You see how that works? And what I really look at is what are the emotions that we learn in early childhood that we are bringing to our business and that we're acting out through our business and through our money. And for artists, there's a whole set of feelings that go with that. When I first got to Santa Fe, which is a place where people say things like, you can't make a living in Santa Fe. I love Santa Fe and I love my jobs. It's in New Mexico, which is one of the poorest states in America. And people are always talking about how it's hard to make a living. Well, when I got here, and I came to Santa Fe almost 20 years ago with $200 and whatever fit in my car, and that was the extent of my estate. Yeah. And as I got to know people, I said to myself, why are there so many bright, creative people here and they can't make a living? And I realized that they didn't, as children, they didn't feel supported in who they were. And they were acting out that lack of support through what was happening through their so-called businesses. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah. And what I'm finding fascinating here is this is perhaps not to do with just our emotions towards money. This is more holistic. This is about our emotions and feelings towards everyday situations and relationships with people in life.
And to ourselves.
And to ourselves. Could you talk a little bit more about that specifically?
Okay. So again, remember, how you deal with money is how you deal with your relationship with yourself and others. And if you've got a lot of head trash going on, if you're, oh, I should have done this and I should have done that. And for creatives, you know how to be in a space of inspiration. You know how to sit in front of a canvas and just let it happen. You know how to let a song come out. I'm very creative in business. When I sit down in front of the computer, I do it without an agenda and I just wait for my instructions every day. So you know how to be in that inspirational space. But there's this part of you that is afraid of not being supported. You have an expectation of not being supported because that was your experience as a child. And one of the things that is at the core of our being is our need for touch and connection. And that longing that we have for money has nothing to do with money. It has to do with the longing that we feel because we didn't get the kind of connection and touch we needed as children.
It sounds very deep-rooted. So how did one go about starting to perhaps resolve their relationships with themselves and with money in your experience in the work that you do?
Well, first of all, you have to begin to recognize what's going on internally. So that if, and for creatives, this is actually a little easier because you're more in touch with your inner world than most people are. But you may not have been taught how to get in touch with your emotions and express them. Now, for a lot of people, their creation is their expression of their emotions. But there's a place where you actually have to embrace those emotions within yourself and make them okay. The pain is okay. The feeling of confusion is okay. That, to allow yourself to feel your feelings, not just in your creation, but within yourself. To be able to sit with yourself and say, there's something going on inside of myself that's uncomfortable. Now, what I teach is for people, and I do this with money a lot because money is a great way to get in touch with your feelings. So if you're craving money, or you're saying, oh, I wish I had more money, and you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, it's never about money. It's always about people. What am I really feeling? And what you're feeling is a longing. And then you say to yourself, well, what is this longing? Where did that come from? And it often goes back to when you were in touch as a child. The system that I use is recognize, release, and replace. Recognize what you're feeling, and if possible, where it came from. Whatever you're feeling today is something you felt as a child. And when you recognize that the anger, the darkness, the whatever that is, came from the way you were treated as a child. And the release comes either through your creation or by being able to say out loud, I feel so disappointed. I feel so lonely. I feel so angry. I feel so deprived. To be able to say that out loud, and then to say to yourself, and here's the key, what would I rather be feeling? And rather be feeling, and do I know that feeling, or do I have to teach myself how to feel that? Now, for artists, it's a different thing. I was talking to one the other day. One of my clients is an artist, and she was afraid to give up her anger because her art is inspired by her anger. So she can't imagine herself being artistically expressive without her anger. So for her, she has to decide if she wants to let go of that anger or not. Can you see that?
I can, yeah. So if somebody makes art from perhaps some of their darker emotions, are they able to coexist with being able to continue to do that and make money?
There's no reason not to, because lack of money equals lack of touch. Now, let me tell you a little story. Once I understood the connection between money and touch as the core, because I keep looking at the core emotions. And I'm a person who appears to be sophisticated when I'm dressed up and not hanging out at the dog park. Mm-hmm. And I have a certain way about me that seems almost remote. And I began to realize that this was my way of protecting myself and keeping myself from being hurt. Because if I'm hissing at you, you're not going to come too close, right? Mm. And then I saw this touch piece, and I said to myself, well, is it true that I'm not getting touched? And I said, well, how do humans touch each other? They touch each other by listening, by complimenting each other, by hugging, in inappropriate ways, because we don't touch other than in appropriate ways in our culture, and by handing each other money. So then I said to myself, am I being touched on a regular basis? And the answer is yes. I've got 10,000 people on my mailing list. That's 10,000 people who have touched me. And I realized that I get touched on a daily basis, but I don't necessarily allow myself to feel touched. Can you see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd get into bed at night, and just imagine what had happened during the day. And when friends say, "Hi, Joan," instead of kind of putting my wall up because I'm afraid of being touched, I practiced allowing myself to feel touched and learning how to feel touched. And it was amazing. Within a very short period of time, my business changed and things started changing in my life that I could not have imagined. And it just really paid off for me recently. I just had hand surgery and I'm going to be in a cast for a month. And it's amazing how many people offered to help me. But this time I let them help me, which wasn't my normal way. So can you see how this thing about being touched is so important? And under-earning is really just saying, I don't get touched enough.
Right. So this is about letting people in that sense.
Yes, yes. And when you create something, to find the people who will tell you it's good and then to listen to them, to accept it. You know, because sometimes people will compliment what you've done and you say to yourself, yeah, but I should have done it this way. You know? Just get rid of that head trash.
Yeah, interesting.
Let it in. Let it in. When someone tells you they like your stuff, just let it in. Even though that person may be the least important person to you in the world, let it in. Let yourself feel touched.
So in some respects, it's about giving ourselves permission to feel those feelings. Is that right?
Absolutely.
I think you may have touched upon this earlier. What is it, do you think, that blocks us from giving ourselves that permission?
Habit. In other words, if you have a habit of being disappointed or feeling rejected, you're going to bring that habit into wherever you are. So once you can recognize the habits, then you can change them. And it's important to understand your expectations. If you have an expectation of being rejected, you'll probably be rejected. We create our life stories with our emotions. Life doesn't just happen by chance, the whole thing. There's some things that happen by chance, like the weather and certain things, but it's not what happens what matters. It's how we respond to it that matters. And if you're walking around grumbling all the time, well, you're going to keep on grumbling no matter what happens. You have to decide to stop grumbling. These are decisions you have to make. How do you want to feel? And do you know how to feel it? Do you know how to feel touched? Do you know how to feel appreciated? Do you appreciate yourself? When you feel loved, accepted, acknowledged, and appreciated, you're going to get paid. And you have to learn how to love, accept, acknowledge, and appreciate yourself in order to get there.
Wow. So it really does start with the relationship to yourself.
Absolutely. Well, your life is just a reflection of that relationship. So if you were a kid and when you're drawing, I remember when my brother, I'm the oldest of three, and when my middle brother drew this incredible mural on his bedroom wall. My mother didn't quite appreciate it, right? I mean, all over the wallpaper. He never drew another thing, right? He turned out to be a really great businessman. But when you were a kid, you weren't encouraged for this expression of yours, then you're going to expect not to get paid.
Yeah.
To expect not to get supported. And what you're going to do is find people who aren't really attracted to what you do. Because we create our life stories. We draw it in. And how we respond to what we're drawing in is what makes it terrific or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a theme that's come up in this podcast before, this notion that we are the narrators of our own stories, and what we tell ourselves can dictate to some degree, or to a great degree, how our life and our experiences unfold in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I used to do when I was starting my healing work so many years ago, I would say to myself at least 10 times a day, Joni's a good girl and can have whatever she wants. And since I love applause, I would clap my hands and say out loud, Joni's a good girl and can have whatever she wants. And any time that negative self-talk would come in, I would say to myself, thank you for sharing. We don't talk that way anymore. You have to actually make a conscious effort to change it.
Yeah. In your experience, how easy is it to make those changes? Because they sound very deep rooted. And I imagine, well, I know for facts, like changing any habit can be a challenge at times.
Well, it depends upon what you mean by easy. Does it happen quickly? No. You have to be committed to the process. And that's just what life is about. It's about being committed to the process. It's like when the doctors told me when I was 30 years old, or I think it was 31, they said I could never be healthy. I was just a hypochondriac and I should get used to all my physical disorders. And I said, that's not my story. And now I'm in my mid-70s and I'm one of the healthiest people I know. But did it happen quickly? No, it took about 20 some odd years for me to get to the point where I could say I was healthy.
Yeah.
You have to be committed to the process.
That's great. So I'd like to go a little bit deeper on something you touched upon earlier. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the relationship we have with our emotions and the situations that we find ourselves in? How does that relate to our financial experiences?
Let's bring that into the finances. Okay. So let's say you're looking at your bank balance. Now, when people look at their bank balance, they rarely go, oh, whoopee. And if they do go whoopee, it's because they just got paid and it's not going to last a long time. What are you feeling? Are you saying to yourself, someone my age should be making more money? Oh, I know other artists who make a whole lot more money than I do. Are you ashamed of your finances? Because if you're ashamed of your finances, you're ashamed of yourself. And that shame didn't start when you were an adult. It started when you were very, very young, because you came from a family where there was some kind of abuse or neglect, where a parent was an alcoholic or a drug addict, or you were neglected. Those are the things that shape our emotions, and they're what we bring to our money. So when you get a bill in the mail or by email or however you're getting your bills these days, and you get a gripping feeling around your heart because you're afraid you can't pay it, or it just is gripping feeling, to understand that what you're feeling has nothing to do with money. It's a feeling you're bringing to your money that is your habit and needs to be expressed.
Right. Okay. So this is a feeling that needs to be expressed, and that doesn't necessarily have to be something that's to do with money so much, but it's having an effect on our money.
Oh, no. Nothing to do with money. In other words, to be able to say, now, most people don't have a very good feeling vocabulary. Okay, so you go inside, you're looking at your bank balance and you're feeling uncomfortable. What are you feeling? Are you feeling contracted? That's all you have to recognize, that you feel contracted. Okay, so that's recognized. Release can be as simple as making the sound of the feeling, where you just get, you're noticing the contraction and you make a sound of the feeling. That's expressing the emotion.
Yeah.
And then saying to yourself, what would I rather be feeling? Okay, I'm looking at my money. I'd rather be feeling enough. I'd rather feel that I have enough. Now, at that moment, you probably do have enough, because at that very moment, you have you don't need to pay anything at that very moment. You're just sitting there with the numbers, right? So do I know what it feels like to feel enough? To feel that I'm enough and that I have enough. What does enough mean? Most people have no idea what enough is. I know I got this little terrier dog who will never think she has enough food. No matter how much food she gets, it's not enough. She's always looking for more food. That's all her life is about, is looking for food. And a lot of people, that's what their life is about, is looking for more money. Well, do you have enough today? Do you have enough to eat? Do you have a roof over your head? That's all you need today. And to be able to look at that and say, wow, I have enough. And to see what that feels like without saying, I have enough, but I'd really like more. Very few people are satisfied with what they have. And if you don't learn to be satisfied, you will never be satisfied, no matter how much you have.
Right. And I guess this loops back around to what you were saying earlier about being receptive and being open to feeling that satisfaction.
Yes. Yes. You have to learn how to feel touched. You have to learn how to feel satisfied. You have to learn how to feel enough. And you have to learn how to feel love for yourself. If you're a person who has to have the anger in order to do your art, then you're not going to let go of the anger. And you're going to create stories that make you angry, because that's what you need.
What about when we find ourselves holding on to money, for example? You know, maybe you want to buy something or invest in a coach or a course, but, you know, obviously, you know, there's going to be circumstances where you've only got so much budget and you can't quite make the numbers work in that sense. And you're having this sense of withholding. What's going on there, do you think, Joan?
Well, that has to do with the two things going on here. First of all, you're talking about how do I make good financial decisions?
Right.
That's on one side. But you can make financial decisions and not take a course because you don't want to spend the money. And that has nothing to do with withholding. It's just a wise financial decision. But if you feel that you're withholding, that's because withholding is one of your habits. And you may be a person who withholds love from people, or you're one of those people who always has a scowl on their face and you never compliment people. Okay. So if you're very frugal, I was talking to someone the other day and he was talking to me about possibly coaching. And I happen to know that he's got, that he's not uncomfortable financially. And he said, no, I can't afford that. And I said, what did you have in mind? And he came up with a number that was about a third of what I normally charge. And I knew that no matter what number I gave him, unless I gave him the number he wanted, that he wasn't going to do the coaching with me, even though he saw the value of the coaching. And I gave him a higher number because I knew he was going to be a tough client if he did say yes. And he was someone who withheld. He used this, I need the money for, as an excuse for not giving it to people. I mean, it's a very subtle thing that you have to learn. But I've also learned I tend to spend really freely. I'm very flexible. I'm very generous, but that can hurt me in the long run. So I've had to learn how to save. That was, my family never saved. My parents never saved any money. And not until they were well into their 70s did they start saving. And I knew I had to learn how to do that. It's cash flow management.
I'd love to ask you a little bit more about that. But before I do, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you, Joan, and how your early experiences led you to helping others with their own finances and emotions. How did you get into this business?
Well, first of all, money was always a big topic in our family. My father was a compulsive debtor. He was always buying things he couldn't afford. And my mother was the co-compulsive debtor. Bruce, always complaining about the fact that he went out and bought another car, another boat, or, never expensive things, but certainly beyond what he should have been buying. So I learned about debting early in life. When I was in high school, my father said, I'm tired of you asking for money all the time. I'm going to give you $1,000 and it's got to last you the year. And this was in the 1950s. And I said, okay. And I actually figured out how to keep track of what I was spending. And by the end of the year, I had $300 left over. And somewhere along the line, one of my parents borrowed it from me and never paid it back. So I never got the feeling that it paid to save. Okay? In the 1980s, we're fast forwarding, I had this crystal business. I went bankrupt and learned how to manage cash flow. And I've always been someone who liked to share what I was learning. And so, it just kind of happened. And by this time, I was going to Debtors Anonymous and Codependents Anonymous and just learning about how money and feelings were connected. And I was fascinated as I was learning it and started sharing it with everybody. And here we are today.
What was behind your business in the 80s there? It sounded like it was very successful and then it had a sort of turning point. What was that turning point?
My father died. So I was dealing with grief and loss, but at the same time, the marketplace changed. I was the first person to sell crystals for healing and meditation nationwide. I had a line of stones called Joan Stones that was in 600 stores, which were actually a little course in meditation. And I was the only game in town. And suddenly, crystals just happened, and suddenly everybody and his brother was selling crystals, and I didn't know how to adjust to the marketplace. So there were two things that went on. I was also making all this money, and I had no idea how to manage cash flow. I just kept buying more crystals, which was not such a good idea. So all the things came together, and it couldn't work because I wasn't following the rules of the marketplace.
So it's about following the rules of the marketplace and also managing cash flow.
Yes, and being in touch with your emotions.
And of course, being in touch with your emotions. Regarding the cash flow aspect, what would you recommend to somebody to just get started doing that if they're not used to doing that, or it's maybe something they've never done before?
Okay, well, I happen to have something called Joan's Ugly Cash Flow Spreadsheet. When I showed it to one of my friends, he said, "Boy, that's ugly." So it got its official name, and your audience can download it, and it comes with a video on how to use it. But in order to use it, you have to know what your monthly expenses are. In other words, you have to start by keeping track of your money. One of the simplest ways of doing that, and I'll give you the URL for that spreadsheet. It's at prosperityplace.com/spreadsheet.
Okay.
And you can get the video and the spreadsheet. And you have to start by writing down what you spend and what you earn. That's simple. I think it's so much easier if you use software like Quicken or Sage. I think the Sage is the one most of the people in England that I know use. Or mint.com. You have to know how much comes in and how much goes out. And if you feel you don't make enough and you feel really contracted and ashamed of what you're earning, you got to get over it. I mean, that's where this comes in. And, people who are creative often say, well, I don't want to have to think about money. Well, if you want to make money, you have to think about it. It's just something you have to do. And it takes a certain amount of discipline. And in my book, Build Your Money Muscles, I have some simple ways of getting started. And you can't manage cash flow until you know how much you need and how much is coming in. That it's very simple. This is not rocket science. It's a decision you have to make. You have to make the decision that I'm going to develop a good relationship with money. And money, the thing that money likes best, is to be counted.
Yeah, I love that. So this is really about creating the opportunity and making time and having awareness, I suppose, and properly focusing on where the pounds or the dollars are going and what's going in what direction. Is that what's at the essence to all of this?
Yeah, and to grow up, to not think that mommy's going to love you just because you're there. They're not going to buy your art just because it's there. You have to love them first. So many artists come to the space with, difficult beginning stories. And you have to understand how that has affected you and be willing to create a new story. The hard part for artists is when you understand that your difficult beginning is your inspiration. It's having the faith that as you let that pain go, there will be something else to inspire you.
Yeah. I love that. Joan, we've been through a lot. I feel we've been through a lot already in this very short period of time that we've had together today. You mentioned inspiration there. What's been the most inspirational moment for you on your journey so far?
It happened a long time ago when it was something that happened when I realized that there really was another dimension to our being that I could tap into that could guide me. And I'm not going to say angels or God. There's another dimension to our being that can guide us. You just have to let go.
Fascinating. And I'm incredibly grateful for your time today. What are you grateful for today, Joan?
I'm grateful that there was a wonderful hand doctor in Santa Fe. I'm just grateful to be alive. I was not supposed to be alive at this point in my life. So I take each day as another adventure.
Well, it's wonderful. And I've really enjoyed our conversation today, Joan. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Where can folks find out more about you, your coaching, and of course, your book?
Everything happens at prosperityplace.com. I also have a number of courses on udemy.com at this point in time. Just Google Joan Sotkin. I'm all over that. I've been online for 21 years, so you can't miss me. But prosperityplace.com is a place to start, and my podcast is The Prosperity Show.
That's great. And is there anything finally you'd like to add that we might not have touched upon today for our listener?
Well, someone once asked me, what are the three things that you would suggest to people? And the three things that I summed it up with were love yourself, let go, and connect.
Love yourself, let go, and connect. Fantastic. So what do those mean to you, Joan, just before we wrap up?
Well, the letting go part, it's letting go and connect. As I was saying it, I realized that those seem like opposites. But it's letting go of all the stuff that you think is holding you back, letting go of your things, letting go of the story, and just letting go and allowing yourself to be free. And that's when you'll feel free financially. Love yourself, to treat yourself like someone you love. And connect is form relationships. It's one of the most important things you can do in life and in business.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Joan.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Nothing beats the stories and advice of an expert to help you raise your creative game. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe in iTunes, where you can rate and review the show. If you like this episode, I invite you to share it on Facebook or Twitter with the one person you know who will benefit from the wisdom shared here today. You can find the show notes on inspirationalcreatives.com/podcast. If you have a burning question or a great idea for a guest, head on over to inspirationalcreatives.com/contact, where you can connect with me there. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed that chat. It's I gotta say, I'm really glad we've covered this topic, and I'm really glad we featured you, and it's you, because you've got such a light-hearted way of positioning something which I think is actually quite profound in many respects.
Yes.
So
I figure if you don't have a sense of humor, you're going to get really lost.
Yeah, absolutely.